do something.
Mr. Miller, what can you tell us about interest groups?
They're interesting.
Madame DeVos, what can you tell us about interest groups?
Quoi? Je parle uniquement français.
Interest groups.
Quoi? Je comprends pas. Je comprends pas.
Mr. Colbert, what do you know about interest groups?
Interested in groups? Yes, I'm very interested in groups. I'm a member of lots of groups. I'm a bowler. I'm a member of a bowling group.
I'm a member of a reading group and a group that does we go out and we walk, a nature walk, sort of a group like that.
So I'm very interested. Yes. Why? What is your question again?
Mr. Strutt, what can you tell us about interest groups?
That's an interesting question, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
Interest groups!
Thank you, Mr. Sherwood Campbell, for joining us here today.
No, thank you, Scott, for having me.
He's a representative of an interest group. So, what can you tell us about interest groups?
Hello?
Hey, Sherwood, would you like to come for an interview on my show tomorrow night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, see you then.
Alright, bye. Interest groups? Well, see, an interest group is a voluntary association of individuals who choose to participate in the political process in order to influence policy goals that are specific interests that all the members of an interest group share. So if a political party is a policy generalist, an interest group would be a policy specialist. So you could pretty much have an interest group in anything, like the Parent-Teacher Association, any business organizations, or any charities. These would all represent special interests.
Okay, so can you tell me how interest groups came about?
The origins. It all dates back to Madisonian times, and more specifically, a Federalist Paper number 10. So in this, Madison stressed the importance of controlling factions, and he said factions are inevitable because people who have different ideas and different beliefs are going to migrate towards a specific side and represent a specific interest. So he said the only way to control factions is to sort of have a pluralist theory in which all the different interest groups sort of participate in healthy competition and through bargain and compromise create healthy policy that sort of represents everyone's beliefs.
Okay, so speaking of having ideas heard, how exactly do interest groups influence policy?
So interest groups actually use four main strategies. The four are lobbying, electioneering, litigation, and appealing to the public. So lobbyists are really effective for politicians because lobbyists are very savvy individuals who know how to pass legislation. They're great sources of innovation and information because they really specialize on one particular problem, and they pretty much know everything about it. So electioneering basically is when interest groups provide a politician running for re-election with either funds, volunteers, or they create a political action committee. Now, a PAC is a funding vehicle that was created with an act in 1974 that basically allows these interest groups to donate money to a campaign in exchange for sort of an agreement between the politician and the interest groups that the politician will help the interest group and support their ideas in actual Congress and lawmaking. Now, the third object, or the third strategy, is called litigation. And litigation is when an interest group can't really get what it wants done in Congress, they'll go to the courts. And the two main types of interest groups that do this are the environmental interest groups and the civilian or the civic interest groups. And basically what they do is they go to the courts and try to get some sort of law passed that encourages, that sort of requires the greater public to follow or do what they want. So, for example, the environmental interest group went to the courts and got the Clean Air Act passed. And the Clean Air Act pretty much required companies to sort of reduce their carbon dioxide emissions and sort of do practices at the courts. Now, lawyers use something called amicus curiae briefs, in which they write, the rationale behind why they want a specific court case heard, and it's about, one specific side, the interest group's side. So these amicus curiae briefs many times determine which cases will be heard and how they will be ruled upon. Now, the final thing is the appealing to the public. Now, the public is a very powerful thing, because the public, in the end, is what determines the policy agenda, because it's what the public wants that Congress has to do. So many interest groups appeal to the broader public, say, hey guys, look, this is what's going on, this is a bad idea. Write letters to your congressman, they sort of do grassroots campaigning and get the people to speak up against something or speak for something. And if there's enough demand or push for it, Congress will be compelled to sort of listen to these ideas. So those are the four main strategies that Congress, or that an interest group can utilize in order to influence policy action and get what they want done.
Wow, that's very interesting. Are there different types of interest groups?
Yeah, so there are 4 different types of interest groups. They're economic, environmental, consumer, and I think it's civic or social interest groups. Now, the economic obviously fight for monetary policy actions. The environmental favor, eco-friendly policy actions. The consumer interest groups sort of favor policy action that favors everybody. And now the civic or the social interest groups are like in 1960s when you had the civil rights movement. Those were all civic interest groups because they were supporting, civil rights and, rights for African Americans. So that's what civic rights are.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, that's all we have for tonight. You've certainly enlightened us all.
No, thank you so much. Bye.